President at Florida International University, and it is our pleasure to be the co-host along with the Chronicle of Higher Education today, and we do thank the Chronicle very, very much for bringing us all together in this beautiful capital city of Washington. I also want to recognize and thank all of my colleagues, especially the presidents, chancellors, and key university leaders for joining us today. You are the reason why we are here, and you are the reason why we are going to have an amazing meeting with successful outcomes. We are very, very pleased to host this gathering at our new FIU in DC Center. In fact, this is the first event that has been hosted on our new campus, and it really is amazing. I will tell you that in July I was here, and I'm thinking we'll be lucky to get this open in December with all of the supply chain issues and material issues, labor issues. I'm thinking there's no way they're going to get it done. But Carlos Becerra, who was our leader here, really cracked the whip and made sure that we had all the right workers and ordered as many materials as we could to get it done. And it really is a beautiful facility. And it is especially meaningful for us today that given that we are celebrating Hispanic Serving Institution Week and Historically Black Colleges and Universities Week. So it's great to be here on this important occasion as we make these various celebrations. And so many of us in the room today help lead minority serving institutions. I know that all of you are here today because of your commitment to working together to support our common mission that every student succeeds. I hope that today's discussion also explores how we can support and serve our underrepresented minority students in an intentional manner, in the words of our friends at Excellencia in Education. But we must also build upon our research capacity. On that note, I would like to acknowledge our friend, Dr. Charlene Lefebvre. There she is. I was looking. Okay. From the National Institute of Health, who is with us today. NIH is a very, very important partner for so many of us and our institutions. Thank you for being here. I would also like to acknowledge the presidents of House Education and Labor Committee, who is here today, represented by Amaris Benavides. Please stand up, just so we can see you. Thank you as well for being here. By focusing on academics, research, and student success, everyone thrives. We know that at FIU, our students, our community, and our state have benefited from our common commitment to student success and economic mobility. Our center in DC is available for you, our partners, and I invite you to use it for meetings and networking to advance our mutual goals. This is an ideal place for us to continue building strong relationships together. I would also like to invite you to join us here once again in mid-November for our official opening, and during our warm winter months in Florida. You are welcome to join us anytime on campus in Miami. Believe me, Florida winters are the absolute best. And I am a native Floridian, a native South Floridian. I have never lived outside of the state of Florida, and there is no better place. So if you want to come down for 2 months or 3 months, you are most welcome, and we are happy to have you at one of our campuses. You know, this week, FIU celebrates our 50th anniversary. In fact, yesterday was the 50th anniversary of when we actually opened our doors. And on Monday, we received some very good news from U.S. News and World Report. I am very proud to say that FIU is one of the top 5 universities in the nation for social mobility. And that really, partners, is what we are all about as collective universities. FIU is a public R1 university located in Miami with more than 56,000 students, of which 65% identify as Hispanic. We are proud at FIU to graduate the most Hispanic bachelor's and master's degrees candidates in the country, and to be in the top 10 for granting the most baccalaureate degrees to African Americans. And our story is not unlike your story. We are on the same page. We have the same common goals in making higher education opportunities and research opportunities available to traditionally underrepresented students. At FIU and the universities each of you represent, we are inspired by what we fundamentally believe, that social mobility complements research and innovation and is the mission of the American Public University. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Ian Wilhelm, Assistant Managing Editor at Chronicle Intelligence, who will be the moderator for today's conversation. Ian?
Thanks, Dr. Jessel. Appreciate it. And we certainly appreciate FIU's partnership, and congratulations on the anniversary. Congratulations on the space. And also let me say thank you for the Cuban coffee, which I enjoyed earlier. Very good to have an eye-opening for a coffee drink before we have a live event like this as well. I want to thank you all. As Dr. Jessel said, I'm Ian Wilhelm with the Chronicle of Higher Education, and we welcome all of you to this event to discuss a topic that really is perennial in higher education. That is, how do universities balance those two twin priorities, that is advancing their students to success, graduation and beyond, as well as making sure you're advancing research for the public good and for public knowledge. I would argue, however, that the pandemic has put us in an interesting moment here as we move beyond it. Hopefully, I'm going to knock on something and say hopefully we're past it. But in some sense, the pandemic exposed many challenges that universities face when it comes to educating their students in terms of making sure that they stay enrolled, they enroll in the first place. You've seen some challenges there. You've seen some new needs be exposed by COVID-19. And certainly, student success and the focus on it is going to become something that continues to be a huge part of higher education when it comes to how do you make sure those underrepresented minority students stay enrolled in your institution and whether they enroll in the first place. At the same time, we have this moment I think is interesting in terms of research. We've never really had, I think, more of a tangible moment, some have argued, about the value of research and scientific discovery in this country, when we literally have a life-saving moment when a vaccine that I think by most would still agree that has been fundamental in changing our approach to this virus come out. And so in this moment, we are also in a place where research and the value of that research probably has never been more apparent to most of the American public. And that, of course, that research and scientific infrastructure in this country is underpinned by our research universities. So I feel like there's this interesting conversation we might have in this moment right now in terms of what is the both value and the needs of balancing both those things. As Dr. Jessel said, they are not necessarily in opposition, student success or research achievement. They are very much complementary. But how you make those priorities, how you see those priorities, how you make them work together, I think is a key discussion within higher education today and certainly going forward. Before we get to the first panel, I do want to say a couple housekeeping notes. We do want to hear from you in the room. There is a mics on the table. Please do use them or raise your hand and someone will deliver a mic. We'll have a moment for Q&A. I do ask in terms of making sure we have brevity and make sure that your questions are on point for our panelists so we can make sure we can move quickly through them. Just as a reminder, we do also, if you're looking for the bathroom, please let folks know out in the registration area and they can point you to it as well. Finally, just a friendly reminder that lunch will be served at the end of the program today at 12 noon, so please do look forward to that as well. Now, without further ado, let me introduce my colleague, Alex Kafka, who will moderate our first panel with two university presidents. Alex is a senior editor at the Chronicle of Higher Education who has written about student success and research for a number of years. Alex will introduce our first panel and get the conversation going. But again, we look forward to hearing from you as well. Thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you.
And President Jennifer Cowley of the University of Texas at Arlington. Time is short and I could use up more than our 25 minutes just reading their CVs. I won't do that. I'll mention that they are both the first female leaders of their universities, that President Burwell was Secretary of Health and Human Services under President Obama. After helming charitable programs at the Gates and Walmart Foundations, President Cowley, in addition to being a professor of public affairs and planning, was provost at the University of North Texas and vice provost at The Ohio State University. I was practicing the. We're going to get right into our interview for about 20 minutes, then have 5 minutes of Q&A. So please jot down your questions, and we'll get to as many as we can. So if the panelists could come up here, that would be great. Thank you. So let me begin by asking you both, and we'll go alphabetically here and start with President Burwell. Can you briefly sketch the scale of your university's research activities, just as sort of a scene setter?
In terms of American University, we do not have, I think when people think about research, we don't have a medical school or a school of engineering. But our work in our research area is in the sciences in terms of biology, chemistry, NASA. We actually have quite a few NASA grants. This past year, we received our largest, and for us, it's our largest externally funded grant at $15 million from NSF on food sustainability. In the past years, one of our priorities has been growing our externally funded research, and we've doubled that in the last 4 or 5 years. So now we're going to be continuing to move on this, focusing on our research. And our research is in the sciences, but as an institution like we are, we're top 10 School of International Service, top 10 School of Public Affairs. A lot of our research isn't all on the science side. So as we have this conversation from the perspective of American University, we're a place that does both sides of the research. And I would also say, from my perspective in terms of the use of the research, my time at HHS, glad to have one of my former colleagues from NIH here in the Hill that funds all that great research. That is also my perspective, even though it isn't from where I sit right now.
Thank you. And President Callie.
So the University of Texas at Arlington is fairly unique. It's one of the most diverse universities in the country. We're both a Hispanic serving institution as well as an Asian American, Native American, and Pacific Islander institution. Much like FIU, we graduate a very large number of Black students as well. So it makes us rather unique that we have this very multicultural institution. We are a R1 research university and recently achieved the state of Texas's Tier 1 status. We do about $125 million in research. Much of that is centered in the industries that are most important in our state. So, for example, we have major aerospace industries located in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so that is one of our thrusts of strength. Like American, we do not have a medical school, but certainly partner with the medical schools that are throughout the state on collaborative research in the health space. We have a very large, the nation's largest public nursing school, and so that's one of our other areas of strength.
So getting to the heart of today's topic, let me ask you both, are research and student success mutually exclusive, mutually compatible? My guess is that it's probably some nuanced place in between. It all depends how you do it. And so I'm wondering if you can sketch out maybe 2 or 3 guidelines regarding how you structure those processes so that undergraduates benefit.
Sure.
Sure, yeah, why don't you start?
So I'll say,
my head's swiveling
we're
around.
striving to be one of the most inclusive and impactful research universities, and that starts with thinking about our students first. If we look at the area of STEM, we know that more than half of the students who start in STEM will leave STEM, and that number is even higher for underrepresented students. So we have a program that we run with Howard University called NSTEM that is focused on mentorship and keeping students, particularly underrepresented students, in STEM so they will get to those research opportunities. Then it's thinking about all the ways we need to keep students in school, getting those high impact experiences in research. And for us, it's really about saying, if our students are the core, and we believe that research is one of our core strengths and something that is important for the university, for the state, for the nation, then how do we do that synergistically and create those opportunities for our students to be engaged in our research enterprise?
So we call ourselves a student-centered research university, and that is what we try and practice in terms of taking both of those things. I think it's important to admit that it is challenging. Anytime you need to put resources against 2 different things, I think it's important to recognize that's what the challenge is that I think we all talk about and face. As a university, the way that we focus on this issue is actually starting at the big level and to the small and tactical level. In our core strategy, if you go to our website and look at our strategy, Changemakers for a Changing World, you will see the strategy actually reflects this in terms of it is research and scholarship, learning and teaching, and community. To get to some of the inclusivity issues that we're talking about. And structuring your entire strategy by that everyone in the university, whatever side you're on, knows that. And so our entire strategy is structured that way, and strategy leads to how you do the distribution of resources. At a tactical level, another example of how we do this, it is about the signaling and what you do. At American University, at our convocation, we have a convocation as well as a graduation. We consider them the bookends. At our convocation, instead of me delivering the address to the students, it is the Scholar Teacher of the Year. And the scholar is the person has to have been research active and one of our best researchers as well as one of our best teachers. So when the students come in, and for the entire university, we are signaling we value both of those things, and we're showcasing it for our new students. Those are some specific examples. The other thing is, I think you do find the synergies. That's what you try and look for in terms of there are places where it is important. Our students are attracted to that high quality faculty that are doing the cutting edge research. Right now the professor that won that grant for food sustainability, everything that he's doing, every student on our campus wants to be a part of. And similarly at American University, in biology and chemistry, 50 and above % of the papers that are papers that are produced and published by our faculty have undergraduates listed. And so that means that the undergraduates are actually helping with the research. And I know that is hard and different in different spaces and fields, but working to create, as you said, the synergies, I think is really important.
Let me ask you about UT Arlington's recently joining the Alliance, I want to make sure I get the name correct, the Alliance of Hispanic Serving Research Universities. I was wondering what the impact and what your plans are for being part of that group.
Absolutely. The 21 Hispanic serving research universities came together to create this alliance and say we have a lot in common, and we are really going to need to be part of working together to change the professoriate. So our goals are simple: double the number of Hispanic PhD students and grow the number of Hispanic faculty by 20%. And that's something we can do because of our unique position as Hispanic serving institutions. We have more than 800,000 Hispanic students at our institutions, and we can grow the professoriate of the future. And so we're looking for partnerships with our federal government partners, with foundations, to help us in meeting those goals.
And a follow-up question to that. So I think sometimes there's a question between STEM and humanities, social science research, whether people sort of equate research with the laboratory and the tech stuff, and less so with the humanities and social sciences. And as I understand it, the Alliance is trying to help foster some of the social science and humanities research as well, right?
Absolutely. One of our first projects was starting in the humanities and saying, what can we do to foster greater success in this area? And so we have a variety of collaborations at institutions with a number of people in this room that is allowing us to engage more deeply in thinking about Latinx issues and the ways and opportunities that we can serve the Hispanic community through culture.
Let me ask you, President Burwell, the question of whether research should be part of every undergraduate experience. I've heard different views from different kinds of institutions and different presidents on that. I'm just wondering where you stand. Is it something that, whether they particularly want it or not, should be part of their undergraduate years?
So the way I think about that question is research is a part of something that I do believe should be part of every undergraduate experience, and that's experiential learning. So experiential learning, I believe, is an essential part of the value proposition that we provide for the undergraduates at all of our institutions. And so experiential learning cuts across a wide swath. And this particular area that we're discussing today, research, and when we talk about research in labs or research in communities on both sides, the humanities and in the labs, I think all of that, it depends on the individual student's needs, how you're going about that. Here in Washington, DC as a university, and a couple of my colleagues, GW, James Madison, you all know, being in these places, sometimes that experiential learning is very much about working in either business or government, NIH, in terms of what we have present. So I believe that it is an essential part, but I would expand. I believe research is just one subset, and that's about meeting the students where they are in terms of their needs. If you're in the sciences, let's get in those labs and publish those papers. We clearly believe that, as you can hear in terms of those publications at American University. But if what you want to do is experiential learning is, we have 8 students who can now list Pulitzer Prize on their CV because they did work with the Washington Post, who won the public service Pulitzer this year, and 8 of our students were part of those teams. And so that's the experiential learning, whether it's in the lab, and in the lab we do it too. Another one of our students was part of that broad team 3 years ago, the team that did work in physics. It was one of our women. We have almost 50% of our physics majors are women or students of color. So working to meet the need, but yes, it is a subset of a larger thing that I put on critical, on the critical list.
Please have those journalism students look up our internship program. So I'm wondering whether there are ways to make particularly low-income and first-gen students more comfortable with the research enterprise. If they come to school, if they come to college, they're interested in research, but they don't really know where to start. Are there ways that institutions can make them feel more comfortable within that world?
I think part of it starts with how we think about research opportunities. For our students, they need to work. And so that's one of the things that can take them away from the campus. So how do we bring them into the campus and give them great experiences? So we said, how do we start with work study? Can we make those work study opportunities research experiences and get them placed in our labs and field environments and wherever we need to be? We can use that support as a way to say, hey, you need a job day one. We've got places to get you into our research environment. Since that's just one small way that we have changed our thinking about what it means to be able to truly serve our students and get them engaged in research environments.
So I'm going to ask a somewhat delicate question here, but we are in Washington and we do live in a tense political environment these days. And I'm wondering whether you and your colleagues feel political pressures, political crosswinds in determining your research agenda and thinking about the research that you pursue.
So I'd say I'm very fortunate in the state of Texas that I'm in a state that has a high value on research and has made very significant investments in developing research infrastructure. So from that perspective, we're in a very welcoming environment. Some of the social issues do become a bit more challenging, but we have academic freedom. We want our faculty to be pursuing the research that they find most valuable, and that's what we do.
And you're not a public university, but you do have, federal research grants and that kind of thing, and your own experience in the federal government. So I'm wondering whether at AU you feel some of those influences.
So I think those influences come in, and as many things, it's related to resources. In terms of what is funded or not funded and the support for the kind of research that you do. And what I guess I would say is in my current job, in my current role, what I work to do is think about how I support our faculty in solving the problems they're trying to solve. What they're trying to do is create knowledge to do that better. And it's my job as president to do everything I can to clear the path to make that happen. And whether that's supporting them in getting the externally funded research that we need to make that happen, or dealing and kind of threading our way through things when it is needed. In my old role, when I was secretary of HHS, what I would say is it was my job to try and prevent that, to try and prevent that kind of thing. I mean, NIH funding is always under pressure because people want their health issue to be funded. And so how you create processes that are independent to determine what is the biggest need for the nation is a really important thing. Or, I'll give you a very specific one that, is a place that gets to the heart of your question. The Centers for Disease Control have never been able to research gun violence. the funding doesn't, the funding won't come for that, and other funding will be taken away if they do that. And so the question, I think, is a very real one in terms of, and wherever you sit, I think, you need to do your best to either manage through or try and get us to all focus on what's the problem we're trying to solve and how do we get there.
Thank you. We're already running a few minutes behind schedule. Ian, you can let me know if I need to cut it short, but let's go ahead and take some questions from our audience here. Don't be shy. If not, I have plenty more, but I know you've got some.
President Burwell, you mentioned that at American University, there's a message campus-wide about the importance of balancing research and student engagement and how faculty have collaborated with students in publication of papers and such. Has that found its way into the tenure and promotion process that recognizes that balance?
It's interesting because I would say my answer to that would be we should and can do more and better. On the teaching part of it, we've recently redone how we account for the teacher surveys, because this gets to the issues of inclusivity and making sure, to answer the other question, having faculty that look like, our students and our student body, and making sure you're diversifying and keeping faculty and promoting faculty and that sort of thing. So we have done some internal changes that get to this question of the mentoring and engaging of students in that way, and so that people are getting credit. Do I think we need to do more? Yes. And I think you're right to reflect. This is a very important, the tenure process, whether it's working on issues of inclusivity or issues like this in terms of what you value, it is very important to get to that, because that is what drives, and rightfully so, you understand why so many of our faculty's behavior. The other thing that does do it, though, is it is a cultural point in the schools. There is competition in the schools for who's doing the best, who's doing the most. I mean, our faculty are pretty clear which schools need to raise their retention or do more in this way, or which schools are doing better. And that's the other thing that helps. I think you need to do it in that line. But the other thing that helps is creating a healthy competition through transparency of who's doing well on what. You can imagine our School of Communications is quite proud of those 8 that I talked about. Well, then our School of International Service came back and we're #1 in Model UN in North America. Let's see you on that. And then our School of Public Affairs is coming in. So that's the other thing that helps a little bit, but the faculty stuff we all need to focus on. It's a very good point.
Thank you.
Please.
Cindy Reeve, UC Santa Cruz. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the challenges of getting our amazing Hispanic and other minority undergraduates into doctoral programs, and what strategies we might use to solve that problem.
I think that's a wonderful challenge for all of us to embrace. So part of our approach is we have a very large undergraduate student population. And so what can we do to get more of our students to engage in research experiences and get the mentorship that they need to be prepared to be successful in applying for graduate school? I was talking to one of our math doctoral students who happens to be Hispanic, and she never thought, and her parents could not understand why she would ever go to graduate school. She was supposed to become a math teacher, come back to San Antonio, and do great things there. And it was because she got involved in undergraduate research that she saw, and her faculty saw, the potential that she had. Now she's working on projects for USDA in looking at how do we make agriculture more productive. And so she's doing all this fantastic work as a graduate student now, and we're preparing her to go join UC Santa Cruz or some other great university in the room to go on to do great things. And it's really bringing much more intention to growing our undergraduate research opportunities so that we can get more of our underrepresented students to have those experiences and begin to imagine what the possibilities might be in terms of pursuing a doctorate or other form of graduate education.
Thank you. Do we have time for one more? Anyone else? Please.
So my name is Fakes. I'm an undergraduate right now at FIU. And my questioning is what do you think can be done to improve student engagement when it comes to research? For me personally, I went into FIU, I was thinking, oh, I'm gonna go law enforcement. The highest I could ever do was joining FHP. And through FIU, I networked and I met people, and I decided this is my passion. I found a program that I can't talk about to conduct research with. But when it comes to student engagement, what do you think can be done to really, advertise and get people to come through the doors to learn about their research and find their passion?
So I think there are a number of things that we need to do, and it's related to the last question in terms of how we create that path, because the first part of that path is the student engagement and the student knowledge. So it is about that mentorship of the students from day one in terms of exposing them to the possibilities of what they can do and helping them through the barriers. And that's, I think, the big thing that we need to do when the students come. It is about when they come in the door. This is something that is in orientation. This is something that needs to be emphasized, and it's across your student body in terms of this issue of experiential learning. And making the experiential learning be something that is both fun to do, counts for credit in terms of moving you along, and is paid for, are some of the most important things that we can do. So it's creating that knowledge, creating that ability to do it, and that means whether it's the mentoring and the connecting you with the lab or having you come to their lab in terms of the specific issues of research, and making sure that you're paying and making sure you see the payoff, that you understand, if I do this research, it leads to X. And that is about the clarity of academic pathways broadly defined that we need to help each of you as you come in with, and focusing on that. And I think it is getting to an issue which is putting the student at the center in terms of how we think about what we do, and putting the research at the center. Putting what the outcome you're seeking at the center of how you plan as a university.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Burwell. President Cowley, did you want to respond to that too? Okay, we're packing a lot in this morning, so I better wrap it up and turn it back to Ian. Thank you both so much for your time and participation today. Thank you.
Let me know if you get my hand.
President Cowley, President Burwell, thank you very much. Alex, thanks to you as well. So I love the fact that we have federal officials in the room as well as an undergraduate asking questions about this topic. It seems very appropriate. And we just heard from two university presidents digging into this topic, looking at the strategic issues, the resource issues, how these issues may come together in many ways. So let's take a little look and go down to a different perspective, and that is from the provost. So I want to help introduce here Elizabeth Behar, who serves as the interim provost, executive vice president, and chief operating officer at Florida International University. We're going to dig into the questions about how the provost sees these challenges and pick up on some of these issues we talked about faculty. So Dr. Behar, please join me up at the top.
I am unmiked.
Okay. I think the room may be small enough.
Disclaimers, I'm fine.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining me up here. And as Alex did with American University and with University of Texas at Arlington, I want to hear a little bit about your research profile and how you at FIU see your goal in terms of research. As Dr. Jessel mentioned earlier, you all are 50 years old, celebrating your anniversary, so relatively recent history in terms of the measurement of as many universities. So how do you see your research profile within the state of Florida?
Certainly. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. We actually try to not disaggregate our research profile from our university profile because it's all as one. And this was really about the integration. President Jessel spoke earlier this morning about our success and 50 years young, Ian. That's personal to me.
I hear you on that.
But really, what we talk about. So when we take a look back at our last 5 years at FIU, we have over $1 billion in research expenditures. We are the largest producer of bachelor's and master's candidates of Hispanic in the United States. Notice PhD is not there, but that is a goal. And working together with the HSRU, we hope to achieve that. We are top 10 producing in African American graduates, right? So that is part of who we are and part of the fabric as we are 50 years young, we also have a very young medical school. So the majority of our research is in life sciences, social sciences, engineering, geosciences, and physical sciences. So that's where we are. Last year, we anticipate just over $250 million in research expenditures, and one of the largest, fastest growing research enterprise institutions in the nation. So we're very excited about that. How we translate that to Florida is we have grown up as an institution, much like many of the institutions here, with our communities. And so that development is not only organic, but it's solution-centered. And it follows the path of our students and our student experience, which is our students want economic mobility, our students want a chance for growth and development, and so our research is very much focused on health disparities, energy, right, energy solutions, and really being an environmental resilience, right, and looking at how we can, as an institution that represents demographically, potentially about a generation and a half ahead of the rest of the country from a diversity perspective, we really do take that to heart. And as we develop our research solutions, it is not just for the here and now, it is to show a model forward for the rest of the country and for other communities. And so our environmental resilience program, our energy management programs are just that. What can we learn from ecological field research in the Everglades? And then partnering with other institutions, partnering with other governments around the globe as to how they can impart a portion of that knowledge to their ecosystems.
Thank you for that. As President Burrell mentioned, the issues of research achievement and student success, they have a synergy to them. And you mentioned something similar to me in a call we had, that those two efforts can be complementary, but the effort has to be intentional. And I want to dig into that a little bit more about what you mean by the intentionality. And as provost, what choices do you have to make in terms of resources when it comes to that, being intentional about bringing those two broad missions together?
So I think our presidents earlier said it very well. You have to be intentional. This work is not for the faint of heart. We certainly understand that, but we can't shy away as leaders from those tough decisions and those tough, and more importantly, the tough questions we really need to ask ourselves. We have some really good models that we have developed over time to balance smart investments, smart growth, right, smart research, and how we tie. So for example, we have our STEM Transformation Institute that at a strategic level, as one of the presidents noted earlier, was very focused on how we improve STEM education, right, the teaching and learning process, and how that can actually intentionally curate pathways into a research pipeline for students, and how we can intentionally incentivize faculty to ensure that they have undergraduate students on their research grants inside their research labs. Right, and so really focusing on ensuring that our researchers and our teaching professors and those who are combined are really focused on and understand the university goals and objectives.
Let's dig deeper into that, because I also want to pick up on this question that we had earlier about working with faculty on this, and as a provost, that's one of your primary responsibilities. And usually the generality is that for tenure and tenure track folks, research trumps. Research dollars will trump when making those decisions about promotion, about rewards, and often teaching is left to the side. How do you build more incentives into the system so that isn't the case? How do you make sure, as you said, that undergraduate research is also very much focus of those professors who are trying to go for tenure? Certainly.
So that's a loaded question. So I think there's a couple of things. One, with clarity, FIU administration has invested in acknowledging teaching faculty, acknowledging teaching accolades, right? Recognizing those successes in the classroom and how they directly translate to the success in the student outcomes and the ability for students to actually get into a research lab. We've worked with external donors and partners and some of our advisory boards to very publicly recognize simultaneously our teaching faculty as well as our patent awardees of the year, right? And so we certainly also recognize our research faculty. We've established career ladders in both, right outside of the tenure track system. Within the tenure track system, we can talk a little bit about that, but outside of the tenure track system, we have career ladders for teaching faculty as well as for research professors. And so everyone understands in the ecosystem that there's not one panacea, that it's really multifaceted, and we have to be able to do that. From a student side, I think one of the things that we hone in on, and particularly with our tenure track faculty being embedded in the very fabric and core to what we have to do, is to really understand who our students are. And that student success is not just about being student-centered, it's about being student-centric to the students that you have today. And I will say this, right? We talk about intentionality, we have to walk it. From a higher education perspective, best practices, and we talk about best practices, are based on historical years of aggregated data gathered at majority institutions. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not who we serve, right? And so shout out to Deborah Santiago, who's not here, but President Brown is, right? We talk about evidence-based practices, which takes those best practices, because we walk best practices and excellence, and really say, how do we tweak them based on the culture, the ecosystem, and the fabric of who we are as students, and use evidence-based practices by what's happening today. As I said, FIU is a generation and a half ahead demographically, economically. So what does that mean? I'll give one example, if I would, Ian. During the pandemic, I had a student reach out to me and said, I'm a senior. I'm applying for graduate school. I don't have the ability to draft a letter, to ask a faculty member for a letter of recommendation, because all my classes were online, right? That was just evidence of the fact that if we don't curate pathways for our freshman students, we know their profile, we know, as President Crowley said, we know they have to work. We know that oftentimes they have to prioritize potentially working or other responsibilities in exchange for experiential learning opportunities. They shouldn't have to make that choice. We have to make sure that we're building in those experiential learning opportunities into our students' fabric, into that 4-year, 120 credit experience. We have to curate pathways. We know if our students are first generation students, whether they're Asian American or Black or Hispanic American, we know they don't come with the societal and social network and the capital to understand what happens in a research lab. So how are we embedding that in our freshman experience, not with 5 minutes, but with real intentionality about the programming that we're doing that really sets apart an intentional, curated pathway from freshmen to sophomores, so that by the time they're juniors, they can actually apply to work in someone's lab. When we look at our highest producing faculty, from a research perspective, they have a pipeline. We have to break into that pipeline. They do have a pipeline of students, and how they've always received students is how they've always received students. And so if we want to make change, we have to design that intervention there with intentionality. I talk to lots of faculty or lots of institutions, and they say, we have REU, we're good. And I say, really, take a look at your data. You're kind of doing the same thing you've always done. And so how do we inject ourselves in that is with some of that, right, that strategy and tactical approach that the president spoke about earlier.
And speaking of sort of that tactical approach, I want to get back to the point you made about various tracks for the faculty, because this is something we were watching at the Chronicle with interest and see it as something of a growing trend in terms of creating different tracks, not just the traditional track in terms for tenure faculty or for other faculty. So could you just describe quickly just the different tracks that you have established at FIU for different types of professors, different types of instructors?
Absolutely. So it's all hands on deck, 56,000 students strong, right? A few thousand faculty. And so we want to certainly leverage everyone's strengths. We have research tracks from assistant, associate, and research professors who are dedicated to the research and have more limited expectations on teaching and service. And likewise, from a teaching professor track, assistant, associate, and full teaching professors who are dedicated to the teaching enterprise. But that does not mean that they're necessarily siloed. It means they're honed in on their areas of expertise. And then with intentionality, the departments and the department chairs really work together to make sure that one understands the other, right? And in the middle stands our tenure track faculty in the middle of that group. And they're really the core and the essence of the American Public Research University, no doubt.
That's great. Thank you, Dr. Behar. Any questions for Dr. Behar before we take a quick break? Please.
Thank you for being here. You spoke a little bit about how you prepare students for the research environment, particularly first-gen and students of color. On the flip side, how do you prepare faculty for those students coming into their labs, strengthening the pedagogical styles that they're using, and then assessing in order to ensure that the experience is actually equitable and that they're not just going through the motions in order to complete?
That's a great question. So one, I'll give the answer that tugs at my heart is that at FIU we have faculty who are there because they want to be there and they want to teach the students that we have. So that's an easy win for me. But we also work at it really hard from a pedagogical perspective, from an educational perspective. And one of the things that we did in creating our first, and we're badging students, right? We're providing micro-credential for students so that they understand that they actually have a skill set, that they didn't just walk out of an orientation program, that they can advocate for themselves, that there's certain competencies that they are now better prepared to do. And we actually have, by design, some of those faculty researchers in that badging process. So the faculty come to understand and get to know our students prior to actually being in the research lab with them. So they're part of the process, and that's working.
Any other questions? Please.
We've only talked about faculty. What's the role of staff in this conversation and the things that they do and the way you think about their role?
It's critical. That's not the best answer, but it's the truth and it's the lifeblood, and particularly at institutions that are working like ours to really raise the level of support for our students. Right. That's what our students don't come with. One is those experiences and those support systems and those structures. So be they support staff in an academic unit in a college. It is really critical for us, for me, as you can tell here, to over-communicate, right? And so we do have an operational philosophy. I think the president touched upon it a little bit earlier, and she talked about strategic to tactical. We talk about central coordination with local deployment, which is not, Elizabeth is a micromanager. It means that, right, the Office of Academic Affairs is really laying out the ecosystem and providing clarity of everybody has a role in the graduation of our students, in the celebration of our success of our research, and in the excellence that we provide. And so for our academic advisors to understand that role, for our support staff in academic and student affairs, in IT, in external relations, they all have to really understand the role that they play and how they are pivotal in really achieving those successes. And I think that over-communication helps for buy-in, and certainly we very much so focus on supporting our staff and recognizing their successes as well, and recognizing that our institutional success is embedded in their success. So thank you for that question.
Other questions? Well, Dr. Behar, I really appreciate your time right now, and I thank you for all your insights. We're going to take a quick break here and come back at 11:20. Please help yourself to some coffee. Please help yourself to talking to other folks as well, and we'll join and continue the conversation with two vice provosts of research and with my colleague Kafka. So thank you again for joining today, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Ian. It's an honor to introduce Dr. Willie May, Vice President for Research and Economic Development at Morgan State University, and Dr. Sriram Rao, Vice President of Research and Innovation at Virginia Commonwealth University. Come on up if you would, please. Again, I'd gobble up all of our time if I told you about all of these gentlemen's accomplishments. I'll mention briefly that Dr. May, a much honored chemist, served as director of NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and was also under Secretary of Commerce for Standards and Technology. Dr. Rao, during his 25 years of research and administration, has published some 90 peer-reviewed papers in his field of pathogenesis and allergic inflammation. As with my earlier chat with Presidents Burwell and Callie, time is tight here, so the panel will be about 20 minutes, followed by about 5 minutes for audience questions. Dr. May, let me begin with you. You've had an illustrious career, as I've just mentioned, and we've talked, and you were telling me about how you came to Morgan State partly out of a sense of its mission and your deep commitment to its mission. So unlike a lot of universities with huge endowments and mega resources, you and your colleagues are intent on giving students research opportunities with something of budget constraints. And I'm just wondering if you can share a little bit how you view trying to give them a good immersive research experience given those resource constraints.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me say something about Morgan State University. Morgan State University is an R2 university in northeast Baltimore, who has the audacity to think that by the end of this decade, we will be a Tier 1 research university. We have 9,700 students. We had around 8,000 when I arrived 4 years ago. I guess that growth is due in part to the post-George Floyd experience and the fact that post-pandemic, quite frankly, students are tired of being with their parents and parents are tired of being with their kids. So we've been the beneficiary of that. We have so this is our highest enrollment in record, and we hope we can sustain that. We have a rapidly growing research portfolio. We don't have a med school. However, the Maryland School of Osteopathic Medicine will open on our campus in the fall of 2024. That will be a privately funded institution, but will be located on our campus, and of course we'll be establishing a number of collaborative programs with them. We are proud to say that we are nationally ranked in providing African American engineers. I guess we are perennially 1 or 2 between us and North Carolina A&T in providing African American engineers. We are number 1 in the state in a number of areas, and we take pride in that. We've been very successful here recently with working with the governor, past governor, current governor, to have a number of research centers funded. We've had recently in the last 3 years support to establish research centers to address cybersecurity. We have a cybersecurity policy center. We have a center on urban crime reduction, a center on urban health equities, a center on equitable AI and machine learning, and a center on data analytics and sports gaming. All of those are endowed with base support for those centers in perpetuity. And we're using those to try to grow our research base. Research at Morgan has been somewhat of a challenge, at least from my perspective, because when I arrived, I found that we had all of our faculty doing 4-4, and then at the same time, I'm asking them to step up your research game. And if they were successful, they felt that they were being penalized. That I get this grant, I have to execute that, but I still have to teach 4-4. Fortunately, with these new research centers, we get between $2 million a year and $3 million a year each one of those in perpetuity, and a number of new faculty lines. And in those centers, we are making those multidisciplinary centers. For example, using the one on equitable AI and machine learning, we'll get 14 new faculty lines. And what this allows us to do is to begin recruiting faculty who are going to be research intensive and not try to force folks who came to the university many years ago to be excellent instructors. And now we're trying to ask them to do something that they say they didn't sign on to be. Obviously, we want our students to be exposed to world-class researchers. But again, it allows us to begin developing that dual track that I heard some of the other universities talk about. I could ramble on and on. I'll stop there and then await your questions.
Thank you. So, Dr. Rao, in contrast, you are at a university with a robust health system, a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, and at the same, it's also one of the largest employers in Richmond. At the same time, when you came there in 2018, you've described to me the research enterprise was a little bit stagnant and has revved up quite a bit in the years since, despite, or maybe partly because of the pandemic. So can you tell us a little bit the lay of the land there?
First of all, thank you for this very kind invite, both Florida International University and Chronicle of Higher Ed. Really appreciate this opportunity to be here and to be amongst you all. So very quickly about VCU and how that kind of permeates through the conversation today. So we are what we refer to as an urban public research university. And we are based in Richmond, but we have 3 campuses, 2 that are in Richmond. One is our health science campus that also has our VCU health system. And the second one is on the Monroe Park, which is our STEM-based and business and education. And a third one that's actually in the Middle East, it's in Qatar. So all said and done, we're about 29,000 students, 2,500 faculty, and as you said, one of the largest employers. So having a president who oversees the entire One VCU enterprise is a huge advantage for us, that we are able to better do things together. So from a research standpoint, we are one of the fastest growing actually universities. In fact, we have a board meeting tomorrow, and our president is going to be announcing just 4 years ago, as you said, we were in the 270 million range, and we would have crossed 400 million in sponsored funding this year. So we are growing rapidly. I do not want to claim that it was entirely COVID that led to this. I think COVID has allowed all of us to look at the issues at stake, how it impacts students, how it impacts faculty, how it impacts societal issues, and the stakeholders that we engage with, and retool and rebalance ourselves to address what we need to do. So we are really growing, and what we have done is to be very tactful and strategic in how we immerse ourselves in the student experience and the research experience so that they're integrated. So we've tried to wrap our entire arms around the university's research enterprise into key initiatives. That way we don't do this in a siloed way, but we do everything that we do in an integrated way. And that's one of the ways, and we'll talk a little more about how we are approaching that part of the process. But I think through the kinds of centers and all of that, that we've been very fortunate to have been funded by a variety of people, we've been able to advance that.
Thank you. Dr. May, so you've talked about some of the challenges of putting 48 hours in a 24-hour day for your professors to give them the latitude to help students more in the research enterprise. What about on the student side? Per my question in the earlier panel, how do you make students feel more comfortable with that research endeavor if it's not something that they've been sort of steeped in earlier? Are there methods in terms of putting them with peers or introducing them slowly to labs, or I don't know what?
Okay. Based on my past experience, I've learned to take every question, I won't say I'm a politician, but get the get something out you want to say.
Please.
So I'll say that at Morgan State University, like other HBCUs, we were initially established to provide education to recently freed slaves. And this research is sort of a new experience for us and something that we really pursue at heart, because it's our job to take students wherever they are and take them where they have to be to not only be successful, to support our nation's competitive position nationally and internationally. So we take that to heart. So how do we look at research? Well, first of all, enhancing student success. We have 6 tenets to our 10-year plan. 3 of those are to enhance student success and well-being. That's number 1. Number 3 is to elevate Morgan to R1 status. And 3 is to serve as the premier anchor institution for Baltimore City and beyond. As we work to achieve R1, we're not going to try to be University of Maryland College Park, my alma mater. We're not going to obviously try to be Hopkins, and we are not going to try to be UMBC either. We are going to be truly Morgan, and we are going to try to live out our designation by the state legislature as being the state of Maryland's premier public urban research university. So the research that we are going to grow is going to be focused on improving the urban condition. So we're going to do a lot of that in STEM, but we're going to direct a lot of that to improving the conditions of the environments that many of our local students come from. So.
Thank you. Dr. Rao, along the same lines, you have this souped up research enterprise. How do you invite students to be a part of it?
So let me say this. VCU is a comprehensive university in that we have 14 schools and colleges spread across the health sciences, in STEM and other areas. We are also a majority minority university. So about 58% of our students are underrepresented minorities, and a significant portion of them are Pell eligible and first-gen students. So we have an enormous opportunity to integrate them into the research experience. If you look at the national data, I think students who are immersed in research do much better at graduation rates, their retention in colleges, and their overall, I think, knowledge building that we look at it. And if we look at some of the experiences, our own data, students who are involved in Europe, the undergraduate research programs, more than 80% of these students graduate on time or in less than 4 years. And if you look at the success rate for 6 years, it's 99% of these students who are in these research experiences compared to those who are not. So how do you take that kind of information and permeate it to rest of the students, especially low-income students who are kind of reticent to thinking about research? So I think we have to bring the research to them. So one of the ways we are doing that is, so we have a number of funding opportunities for our faculty, millions of dollars that we have just invested across disciplines in biomedical sciences, in social justice and equity, in environmental and energy, and in education and pedagogy. Now, instead of having these students struggle to try and find out what research they want to do, I think we need to bring those ideas to them. So what we have done is we are going to put on display all these projects that have been funded to faculty, and now allow these students to pick and immerse themselves into these existing projects. So it is a lot easier for them to find projects of their interest and immerse themselves into that and actually fund these students to actually embrace these projects. So I think these are all things that we need to do. And the other part that you asked is a very vital one. Students need to find that the passage to research is not tough, right? We need to make sure that as they're getting into labs, they're seeing their peers, kids of their own age. So I think their seniors, lab assistants and staff, lab managers, et cetera, who can kind of walk them through the process and make it easier for them. So I think we have to bring that to them. Otherwise, we will continue. And if you look at knowledge creation, it's growing at the fastest rate ever. This is a new world order. And if we don't immerse our students early on in the process, we are going to lose this race. Look at what other countries are doing. So we have to bring it to them. That is the way. If the students succeed, faculty succeed, and if students and faculty succeed, the institutions succeed. That's the only way. And I think we're all saying the same thing.
Thank you. Dr. May, let me ask one more question, then we'll get to the Q&A. So a lot of students come to college with entrepreneurial dreams, and a lot of colleges and universities dream of tech transfer success. And I'm wondering if that plays a part in how Morgan State is approaching research projects.
The answer is yes. As you know, we have what I will modestly say is an excellent tech transfer program. In fact, if you index our output for new patent disclosures, new patents granted, new companies started, to research dollars, we rank in the top 10 in the U.S. in every category. And we will continue to do that because it's important to take students from the backgrounds that we have and get them to realize that they can be a part of research that leads to not only new information, but new intellectual property, discovery, licensing, and starting new companies. So we work to have all of our students exposed to research and have the opportunity to intellectualize some of the work and actually transform that to patents, new companies.
See the real world applications of what they're doing.
And the other thing is that we are, I'll have to give my speech, that, back when I was in school and had hair, we launched, the Russians launched Sputnik. And that drove a ton of money into our educational system, and we created the greatest public university system on the face of the planet. And it worked for us because many of the best minds came to this country, studied, many of them stayed and contributed to our society and our economy. Over the last 15 to 20 years, that's changing. A lot of those students are going back home for various reasons, and a lot of the countries are calling them back home. I currently serve, I'm about to resign, on the advisory committee for the Chinese equivalent to NIST. And they had their recent meetings, the last one we did in person in Shenzhen, where they are inviting people from all over the world to come there. They'll probably take the company, but and actually develop new so they are really reaching out to be very, very competitive with us and really eat our lunch. So what we have to do as a nation is invest in our underserved minority communities. That's the only hope we got. I'm not going to say do it for a sense of fairness, but I think we should. We have to do this because it is a national imperative, like the one that we recognized when we were in the space race with the Russians. We have to do a better job of supporting, of bringing these missing millions that some people call it. We have to invest in our minority populations because folks like me we don't have a country to go back to. This is our country, and our country has to invest in us. End of speech.
Educational Sputnik.
Yeah.
Let's take some questions, please.
Cindy Laree, UC Santa Cruz. We're also thinking very intentionally about getting students into research early. And one of the strategies we're taking is to have hybrid lab courses that introduce students early on as part of the curriculum into research in field studies or in pharmaceutical studies. I wonder if your universities are taking a similar approach.
I would say if COVID has taught us one thing, it is that we have to start looking at the entire higher ed in a very different way. The hybrid model has arrived. What it means to each university, we have to kind of nuance it to the kinds of stakeholders that we have, the students that we serve. So this is a growing conversation at our university as well, of how do we create this intentionally, this sort of an experience so that the students have the most valued experience in this hybrid setting. I think so the hybrid model is one thing, and we are looking at that, and I'll have more to share as we implement these things. But I wanted to touch upon this issue of technology commercialization. I think this is a very important one that is so important for us. Students need to be immersed into understanding what entrepreneurship is early on. And as much as we are talking of research, these are the people who have got the creative ideas and they want to transform the world tomorrow. So we at VCU have something called the Da Vinci Center. And these kids, undergrad kids and master's level kids who have backgrounds in engineering and in business and what have you, take on real ideas and problems that companies are coming to VCU and saying, hey, we have a problem. Can your students work on it? And we make that part of their curriculum, in fact, that they are learning how to solve these problems that companies are. We at VCU, we don't take any intellectual property of students, start up and come up with new ideas. We let the students keep that. But offices like ours, where we manage technology commercialization, where faculty do what they do, the new innovative ideas, we're bringing students into the process and saying, hey, join these faculty as they are developing new ideas. So that to me is another way of approaching how we introduce innovative tools and ideas across disciplines to students today at the undergraduate level.
Thank you. Dr. Matt, I wasn't sure if you wanted to respond to that one.
We have a goal of trying to expose each of our students to a research experience. Obviously, we are not successful at that because they all don't want to, but we're working out to do that. And one of the new experiences that we are just bringing online this year, we have a facility in Southern Maryland, about 90 miles from the main campus, called the PEARL, the Protection Environmental and Aquatic Research Laboratory down in St. Louis, Maryland. And we are launching this year a semester at the Bay program, so that we are actually going to allow maybe 15 of our students to spend an entire semester down at that laboratory taking all of their courses. We're also coupling to that, with the help of an earmark that we recently got from the Maryland delegation, a summer at the Bay program where we can expose inner city Baltimore kids with actually going out in the field and doing research, so they understand that it's not abstract and it's not something that's unrelated to them. It's things that can be fun and take them to go places that they never imagined. And I use myself an example of that. Growing up in Birmingham, Alabama, back in the late 50s, 1960s, I never would have imagined that I would have been a Senate-confirmed political appointee and actually represent this country, traveling with the President's Science Advisor to over 50 countries, talking about the U.S. and our value in research, the research that I've done. I never could have imagined that. And if I could do it, they can do it too.
So you share that message, that research took you there
Yes.
to all those places.
Yes.
We're going a little over, but let's try to get another couple questions if that's all right. Yes, please.
I've been only pretty talks in the past. Question for Dr. Ming. You talked about having to convince faculty members maybe traditionally focused on structure, being more engaged in research. What your message to them, both at a practical level and what incentives are maybe offered, but also maybe at a philosophical level. The connection between their roles as instructors and research.
I hope I turned it on.
So what incentives are you giving to faculty to be more engaged in research?
Well,
Than you traditionally adopted?
Well, one of the incentives will be my full support and assisting them to do that, rather than penalizing faculty by saying, we want you to get in research, but you still got to teach 4 courses every semester. We are using the opportunity of these new research centers that we're bringing on, and we're going to be actually bringing on 100 to 150 new faculty over the next 5 years. And what we would like to do, ideally, is for those faculty who have been recruited in the past to be primarily teaching faculty, allow them to do that and reward them for how well they do that. And for the new faculty that we're bringing in to be researchers, actually provide them the infrastructure, the release time to do that. So basically, someone earlier talked about having these dual ladders. We're going to try to implement that as best as we can. However, we are going to insist that all of our faculty, even those that we bring in to be research intensive, actually teach some courses and interact with our students, because it's not a good look to have these very well decorated faculty. And if I'm a parent and I'm paying, and my kid never sees any of these faculty. So certainly we want to make sure that all of our faculty are engaged with students in the classroom, but more and more engage our students to the research faculty. So they see that at a university, faculty teach, but they also do research, and they involve students in research.
Dr. Riley, yeah.
Is this working? Yeah. I think we have to put things in perspective. If we look at the data that came out from the AAU, the public perception of higher ed is not looking great. People are questioning. But one thing that has increased is the public perception of research universities is increasing. So what it's telling us is that the stakeholders, the public, they are looking at research-centered universities to be actually addressing societal needs and helping students be better employed and have a better future. So we have to take advantage of that. So that messaging needs to be brought down from the president and the provost at the higher leadership level, that the expectation, if you are a research university, R1, R2, it doesn't matter, that research has to be an integral part of what you do in your evaluations, etc. The other piece is, frankly, yes, money talks. So you can't just expect people to immerse themselves into research and don't provide the resources and infrastructure. So this is the challenge, the chicken and egg thing. How do you provide the resources? So at least at our university, we are now putting in millions of dollars into potential projects that are interdisciplinary, that cut across themes, and saying we will allow you, we'll release time, you can apply for these projects, and one of the things that we are incentivizing there is that they need to also engage students in the process. So I think by doing things like this, you start creating internal incentives. The richer universities have a lot of endowments. not every one of us is lucky enough to have those kinds of endowments. So when the ability to do that will vary from university to university, but we have to do that. We have to be very purposeful about it and actually measure and bring that into the promotion and tenure process.
So I want to be mindful of people's time and your hunger for lunch. I don't know if we can take one more quick question, then we'll wrap it up. Yes, please. I know you've been waiting patiently.
Elizabeth Hyde from Kane University in New Jersey. As we look at scaling research opportunity for our students, have either of you explored models for embedding introductory level but original research into your core curriculum?
So that is a growing conversation at VCU. We have a new provost who's just arrived and is constantly talking about how we need to make research a part of the integral experience for every student. Technology, commercialization from the standpoint of entrepreneurship being part of every student's experience. Computational background being part of every student experience. So we are actually looking at that very carefully, and I hope to be back here to talk about our experiences, but we are saying we have to do that. But what we do is at least 50+% of our students have some kind of internship opportunity that they can immerse themselves right now, but to do so at a purposeful manner that you're talking is what we are looking at right now.
Dr. May, wrapping the research into a core curriculum, is that something that...
We were looking at that as well.
Yeah, yep.
I'd like to read one statement if I can.
Yep, please, and then we'll wrap it up.
And, I mean, this is the question a lot of people have been asking, but maybe haven't out of being polite. And that is, what has been holding HBCUs back in research? I'll read my prepared notes. Well, there are a number of reasons. The first is that HBCUs have been disproportionately carrying the mantle of taking blacks to the middle class. We've done that throughout our existence. And teaching has been excellent there. We've done a great job of educating students, and we continue to do that. But as we at Morgan prepare for our ascendancy as a research university, teaching and community service will be embedded into our research. As I said earlier, we're not going to try to take the same track that Hopkins has taken, that College Park or UMBC. We're going to become this Tier 1 research university on our own terms. We're not going to give up teaching. We're going to integrate teaching and research in a unique and holistic manner.
I look forward to seeing what that looks like and how it takes shape. We better leave it there, folks. Thanks so much for coming. Thank you very much to our panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rao.
Quickly want to say to everyone, thank you very much for joining us today. I do want to have some closing remarks from President Jessel from FIU, but again, we do have lunch available after this, so thank you again from the Chronicle for being here today. We do appreciate it.
A lot of them are going to look like me, but not all.
Thank you very much, Ian, and thank you again to our panelists and our moderators, and for all of you in the audience for the great questions that you asked. I mean, this really has been a remarkable dialogue, and you know, as I'm thinking about everything that was said during our 3 sessions, I'm convinced now that the title of the program should have been Achieving Student Success Through Research Excellence. Research and student success are not mutually exclusive. Research helps us be better teachers, and research helps retain and graduate students. And I think the interactions that we have with our students makes us better aware of the problems facing society and helps us become better, researchers. So they go hand in hand throughout our institutional efforts of academic excellence. And I also think we have to be very intentional in what we're doing. We heard a lot of very, very good examples today. Let's face it, it's not going to happen by chance. We are not going to achieve our goals by doing the same old things. Dr. Rao mentioned, how quickly knowledge is increased. Well, we used to talk about the doubling of knowledge in centuries and decades, and now we talk about it in terms of years, months, weeks, and even days in some areas. And so to do that, we have to be cutting edge in research, and we have to be cutting edge inside the classroom. So I hope that we'll be able to have more and more of these opportunities here, right here at FIU in Washington, D.C. We think this is a great location for stimulating these types of discussions related to research and student excellence, and of course our partnership with our fellow institutions and with government and with business. I mean, it really makes a big difference. In the last year, we have engaged with over 800 students in our Washington, D.C. Center. More than 125 students have completed internships, and more than 400 students have participated in our innovative fly-in programs that provide 3 or 5 day seminar experiences at the nation's capital. So yes, we have 30 that are coming in for a full semester, but we have throughout the semester students coming in for just 3 or 5 days, and that is an amazing experience and one that they take with them throughout their collegiate experience. And I also want to recognize that we don't do this in isolation, and we have not done this great experiment alone. We have learned a lot from our partners here in DC, the University of Texas system, which has a program here in Washington, and of course the University of California system. So we want to borrow from the knowledge and experiences because we know we all can be better because of that. When I did the welcome this morning, I said, I want you to consider our location, your home, away from home. When you're in DC, please come in and use our facilities. Come in and talk to our faculty that will be here, our staff that will be here, and of course our students that will be here. I know you will learn a lot and they will gain a lot from you. In the back of the room, as I was walking out earlier, I saw Dr. Todd Kroll. He is the director of our Institute of Environment at FIU. Dr. Burwell mentioned in her opening comments, at our freshman convocation, I don't even give the convocation address. I leave that to one of our faculty members who is outstanding in research and outstanding in teaching, and Dr. Crowell is such an example. So we may be calling on you for next fall for Panther Convocation, because I think that is an absolutely fantastic idea to have someone that is great in teaching and great in research address our students. I can't...
I just conducted a congressional briefing, so I can talk about that.
I will tell you, when you're talking about the being intentional and the role of mentors and bringing in research very, very early to help with the retention and graduation of our students. I don't know about you, but when I started college as a freshman, I was not thinking I'm going to be a member of the professoriate. That was the furthest thing from my mind. In fact, I was all set on law school. I was a political science major. Things changed a little bit through a job offer, and I said, well, I'll do the MBA. And it was in the MBA program that I worked with some outstanding faculty on research activities. And I thought to myself, this is the place where I want to be. And if we want to improve the number of underrepresented faculty that we have, we are going to have to do exactly that. We are going to have to engage them in research, and we had a lot of conversations about that during the few hours that we were together and listening to our panelists. Before we adjourn, I want to bring up two students from FIU who are here at our DC Center and have them introduce themselves and tell us just real briefly a little bit about your journey.
Hello everyone, and welcome again to FIU in Washington, D.C. My name is Carlos Padilla. I am an honors student at FIU, double majoring in international relations and political science. This semester I have the pleasure to serve as a Hamilton Scholar. That means that I'm here in this facility helping the research, government funding in collaboration with the Department of Defense for a state-of-the-art cold space technology. And also I am doing a research internship with the Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom. It's been a very grateful experience to see all of you here in having the topic of student success and research advancement. I want to invite you to come back this evening at 5, we have something that we call the Talent Lab. It's going to be a panel discussion that explores intersection of federal policy and private entrepreneurship, as well as the role of effective and inclusive STEM education. We're going to have a very interesting conversation with Brookings and national academies, so please come back. Thank you.
That was great. Okay, hello everyone. I am Michelle Morris. I'm a senior here at FIU. So I'm majoring in essentially broadcast journalism with a concentration in television production. That's what I'm doing. So I am interning here in DC as an NBCU fellow. So essentially what that means is basically we are here, myself and my classmates, we are here just reporting the news in DC back to our student-led television student production news station back in our BBC, which is our Biscayne Bay campus. So we essentially go out, we create packages, we tell the news, what's happening in DC, and we go live every weekday. If you guys want to watch, it's sfmn.fiu.edu at 9:30 a.m., and that's what we're doing here. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we all have such amazing students. These students are our future. So again, thank you very, very much for being here. We hope to have you back often, and look forward to seeing you again.